Dual Magic, A Tale of Light and Shadow. A romantic fantasy audiobook written and narrated by Thora Ravencroft, copyright 2020, all rights reserved. The synopsis can be found in the video description. Chapter 1. The rain was pounding against my window, each drop a reminder of the magic coursing through my veins. I had created this storm, and it would be my cover tonight. My hands trembled as I packed the last of my essentials into a small bag. She's becoming too powerful. Father's decision to make her the heir to both the estate and the priestess position is foolish. My sister's voice drifted through the corridor, making me freeze in place. Don't worry, my love. Once we expose her weakness to the family council, everything that should have been yours will be. The masculine voice made my heart clench. Isidore, the man I had once trusted with my heart. I pressed myself against the wall, willing my breathing to steady. The storm outside grew stronger with my emotions, thunder crackling ominously. But how can we be sure it will work? Kaelara has always been Father's favorite. Nyala's voice dripped with contempt. Your sister's power may be great, but her heart is weak. We'll use that against her, just as I have been doing all along. Their footsteps faded away, but their words remained, cutting deeper than any blade could. All this time, every sweet word, every tender moment with Isidore had been a carefully crafted lie. And my own sister, Nyala, had orchestrated it all. I glanced around my chambers one last time. The life I had known, the future I had been groomed for, it all had to end tonight. The magic school in the capital would be my salvation, but first I had to escape. The corridors of our ancestral manor had never felt so threatening. Every shadow seemed to hide another betrayal. Every corner concealed potential discovery. I clutched my bag closer, the familiar weight of my mother's spellbook pressing against my chest through the fabric. My lady, is everything all right? The soft voice nearly made me jump out of my skin. It was only Marina, my personal maid since childhood, her kind face creased with worry in the dim candlelight. I need you to listen carefully, I whispered, pulling her into an alcove. Tomorrow morning, when they discover I'm gone, tell them you saw me heading toward the western road. Can you do that for me? Her eyes widened with understanding, but there was no judgment in them, only concern. They've finally pushed you too far, haven't they? I've watched how they treat you, how that snake Isidore manipulated you. Your sister. She stopped herself, shaking her head. You've been more family to me than they ever were. I pressed a small pouch of coins into her hand. Take this. Leave the estate tomorrow. Find work in the city, somewhere far from here. But my lady, please, Marina, when they discover my deception, I don't want you caught in the crossfire. Thunder crashed outside, emphasizing my words. The storm was growing stronger, feeding off my turbulent emotions. I made my way through the servants' passages, memories flooding unbidden with each step. Here was where Nyala and I used to play as children, before she grew bitter about my stronger magical abilities. There was the kitchen where we'd steal sweet rolls, giggling together. How had that innocent sisterly love twisted into such poisonous hatred? The stables loomed ahead, and my heart ached at what I had to do. Shadow, my beloved stallion, whinnied softly as I approached his stall. I'm sorry, old friend, I whispered, stroking his velvet nose. I can't take you with me. They'd track us too easily. Taking my horse would mark me as a noble runaway. I needed to disappear completely. I heard voices approaching the stable and quickly ducked behind a hay bale. 2 stable boys walked past, discussing tomorrow's duties. Once their footsteps faded, I slipped out into the rain. The storm I'd conjured was perfect cover. Sheets of rain obscured visibility, and the thunder masked any sounds of my escape. But it was also a declaration of power that would be impossible to hide. By morning, everyone would know exactly who had caused this tempest. My boots squelched in the mud as I made my way to the servants' gate. I'd loosened its hinges earlier in the day, and now it swung open silently. Freedom beckoned beyond, dark and dangerous and utterly necessary. Going somewhere, sister? My sister's voice cut through the rain like ice. I turned slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs. Nyala stood beneath the shelter of a decorative archway, her perfect posture a testament to years of noble training. Even in the darkness, her emerald dress seemed to shimmer with an inner light. a magical enhancement she'd always favored to draw attention to herself. Did you really think you could create a storm of this magnitude without anyone noticing? Your power has always made you careless, sister. Her lips curved into a cruel smile. Or should I say, former heir. How long have you been planning this, Nyala? How many years have you spent poisoning Isidore against me? The rain intensified with my anger, each drop hitting the ground like tiny daggers of ice. Poisoning him? Oh, sweet sister. Isidore never needed any convincing. He's known from the start what you are, a naive little girl playing at being powerful. It was almost too easy to make him court you. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the tears I refused to let fall. And what exactly do you gain from all this? Father's approval? The estate? Or is it simply the satisfaction of destroying me? Everything you have should have been mine. Her composure cracked, revealing the rage beneath. I was firstborn. I should have inherited Mother's position as High Priestess. But no, you had to be born with more power. Had to be Father's perfect little prodigy. You could have been my ally, Nyala. We could have supported each other instead of this. This hatred. Allies? She laughed, the sound brittle and sharp. Why would I ally myself with someone who stole everything from me? Someone who... I didn't let her finish. With a swift gesture, I pulled at the storm above us, creating a massive thunderclap that made her flinch and cover her ears. In that moment of distraction, I bolted through the gate. Guards! Her scream pierced the night. Stop her! The air is escaping. I ran faster than I ever had before, my feet slipping in the mud. Behind me, I could hear the commotion of guards being roused, dogs barking, and my sister's continued shouts. But I had planned this route carefully, through the kitchen gardens, past the old groundskeeper's cottage, and into the dense forest that bordered our estate. The trees provided cover, their branches whipping at my face as I pushed through them. I could hear horses now. They must have saddled them quickly. But I had one advantage they didn't expect. I knew these woods better than anyone. As a child, I'd spent countless hours here, practicing my magic away from judging eyes. I reached a familiar clearing and stopped, turning to face the direction of my pursuers. With careful concentration, I began weaving the spell I'd prepared for this very moment. The rain responded to my will, creating a thick mist that rose from the ground like ghostly fingers. She went this way. A guard's voice, too close for comfort. My hands moved faster, adding layers to the spell. The mist began to multiply, creating false images of me running in different directions. It was an advanced illusion, one that had taken months to perfect in secret. The illusion worked perfectly. I could hear the confusion in the guards' voices as they chased my phantoms in different directions. Through the dense mist, torchlights scattered like fireflies, each one pursuing a different false trail. My sister's frustrated scream echoed through the forest, making me smile despite my exhaustion. Spread out, she couldn't have gone far. Isidore's commanding voice carried through the trees. The betrayal still felt fresh, like a knife twisting in my chest. I remembered our last private moment together, just yesterday in the garden. I've never met anyone like you, Kaelara, he had said, tucking the strand of hair behind my ear. Your power, your grace, you're everything I've ever wanted. How convincing his lies had been, how desperately I had wanted to believe them. Now those same sweet words turned bitter in my memory, poisoned by the truth I'd overheard. The sound of hooves approaching snapped me back to the present. I pressed myself against a massive oak tree, its rough bark digging into my back through my wet clothes. The rain continued to pour, but I didn't dare lessen the storm. It was my only advantage. My lady, a whispered voice nearly made my heart stop. It was Marina, clutching a bundle wrapped in oiled cloth. I couldn't let you leave without these. She pressed the package into my hands. Inside were provisions, a change of clothes, and most importantly, my mother's journals, the ones I hadn't dared to pack for fear of their absence being noticed too quickly. Marina, you shouldn't have risked. They're your birthright, she interrupted firmly. Your mother wanted you to have them. Now go, quickly. They're checking the eastern paths, but the western trail through the marsh is clear. Thank you, I whispered, hugging her briefly. For everything. Be safe, my lady. And remember, you're stronger than all of them combined." She disappeared into the mist as silently as she had appeared. I took a moment to secure the precious bundle in my bag, then headed west. The marsh would be dangerous in this weather, but I knew its paths well. More importantly, the horses wouldn't be able to follow. The rain had soaked through my clothes completely, but I welcomed the discomfort. It kept me alert as I picked my way through the treacherous ground. Each step had to be carefully chosen. One wrong move could send me into the deep mud or, worse, into one of the sinkholes that dotted the marsh. Behind me, I could still hear the chaos of the search, but it was growing more distant. My illusions would hold for another hour at least, by which time I would be far beyond their reach. The thought gave me a grim satisfaction. The marsh gradually gave way to firmer ground as I pushed forward. Dawn was approaching. I could feel it in the way the air changed, becoming lighter despite the continuing storm. I had maintained the tempest for hours now, and exhaustion was beginning to set in, but I couldn't stop yet. I reached the crest of a small hill and allowed myself a moment to look back. The estate was no longer visible through the trees and rain, but I could still see the glow of torches in the distance. They were searching in entirely the wrong direction. My illusions had worked perfectly. A wave of dizziness hit me, and I stumbled against a tree. Using so much magic for so long was taking its toll. The storm above began to weaken, the rain lessening to a gentle drizzle. I needed to rest, but not here, not while I was still within their reach. My mother's journals weighed heavily in my bag, both physically and emotionally. She had been the last high priestess, renowned throughout the kingdom for her wisdom and power. Everyone had expected Nyala to inherit her position. She was the firstborn, after all. But Mother had chosen me instead, training me in secret during the last years of her life. "Power without compassion is nothing but destruction," she used to say. "Your sister has ambition, but you have heart. That's why the magic chose you." The memory of her words gave me strength. I pushed away from the tree and continued walking. The trading road to Kaelara would be ahead, and with it my chance at a new life. The magic school in the capital was legendary, but more importantly, it was far beyond my family's influence. The first rays of sunrise pierced through the dissipating storm clouds. I had done it. I had actually escaped. The realization brought both relief and fear. I was free, but I was also alone for the first time in my life. No servants, no family, no position or privilege to protect me. Just my magic, my wit, and whatever courage I could muster. I found a sheltered spot beneath a large oak tree and sat down to rest. My clothes were soaked, my muscles ached, and my magical reserves were nearly depleted. But as I watched the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: hope. The road ahead would be difficult. I had no illusions about that. But anything was better than staying in that gilded cage, watching my sister's hatred grow and feeling Isidore's betrayal cut deeper each day. The magic school awaited, and with it, the chance to become who I was meant to be. Not the perfect noble daughter, not the heir to an estate, but simply Kaelara, a woman with the power to shape her own destiny. Chapter 2. The bustling streets of Kaelara were a stark contrast to the quiet solitude of my journey. After 3 days of traveling through forests and fields, sleeping under trees and eating dried provisions, the city's noise and energy felt overwhelming. Merchants called out their wares, children darted between market stalls, and the air was thick with the scents of spices, fresh bread, and too many people in too small a space. I pulled my hood lower, conscious of how I must look, travel-worn and dirty, with dark circles under my eyes from too little sleep. My family's influence might not reach this far, but I couldn't risk being recognized as a noblewoman. The simple brown dress I'd changed into helped, but years of etiquette training were harder to disguise. Fresh news from the capital, strange happenings at the magic school, applications open for new students. A newsboy's shout caught my attention, and I pressed a copper coin into his hand for a copy of the broadsheet. "Watch where you're going, peasant." The contemptuous voice came just as someone knocked into me, sending the paper flying from my hands. I looked up to see a young man astride a magnificent white stallion, looking down at me with disdain. His clothes marked him as nobility, expensive riding leathers in deep blue with silver threading that caught the sunlight. Perhaps if you weren't taking up the entire street with your horse, my lord, there would be room for both of us. The words slipped out before I could stop them, years of noble upbringing making it impossible to simply bow and apologize like a proper commoner should. His eyebrows rose, taking in my appearance with new interest. You have quite a tongue for a street rat. Someone should teach you proper respect. And someone should teach you proper horsemanship. Your mount's gait suggests an ill-fitted saddle that's causing him discomfort. I gestured to the stallion, who was indeed shifting uncomfortably beneath him. The young nobleman's face flushed with anger. How dare you? My Lord Alaric, a voice called from down the street. The horse fair is about to begin. He shot me a final glare before turning his horse. Consider yourself fortunate that I have more important matters to attend to. As he rode away, I noticed a posted announcement about the horse fair. The grand prize was a wild stallion recently captured from the northern plains. Any who could tame him would win ownership. It was exactly what I needed. Traveling on foot had severely delayed my journey to the capital. I smiled to myself, remembering the hours I'd spent in our stables at home, working with even the most difficult horses. Perhaps it was time to show this city, and that arrogant nobleman, what a street rat could do. The horse fair grounds were packed with spectators, the air thick with excitement and the smell of hay. I made my way through the crowd, carefully observing the proceedings. Several men had already attempted to tame the wild stallion. All had failed spectacularly, much to the audience's entertainment. The horse itself was magnificent, a midnight black creature with a silver mane that seemed to catch starlight even in broad daylight. His eyes blazed with intelligence and defiance as he threw yet another would-be rider into the mud. I could see why they were having trouble. They were approaching him all wrong, trying to dominate rather than connect. And now, the renowned Lord Alaric will attempt to tame our wild friend. The announcer's voice boomed across the grounds. Of course, I should have known the arrogant nobleman from earlier would be here. Alaric entered the pen with confident strides, his blue jacket now covered by protective leather armor. The stallion's ears flattened against his head, sensing the young lord's presumption. "Easy there, beast," Alaric called out, approaching with a rope. "Time to learn some manners." I couldn't help but shake my head. The horse's body language was screaming warnings that Alaric was completely ignoring. 3 seconds later, he joined the other failed attempts in the mud, his pristine clothes now thoroughly soiled. Would anyone else dare to try their luck? The announcer called out, barely concealing his amusement. "The prize is yours, if you can stay mounted for 5 minutes. I stepped forward, pulling down my hood. "I'll try." The crowd parted, many snickering at my appearance. Alaric, who was being helped up by his servants, let out a derisive laugh. The street rat thinks she can succeed where nobles have failed? This should be entertaining. I ignored him, focusing instead on the stallion. Slowly, I approached the fence, not entering yet. The horse watched me warily, but his ears were forward now, curious rather than hostile. "Hello, beautiful," I murmured, letting my voice carry just enough for him to hear. "You're tired of all these fools trying to break you, aren't you?" His nostrils flared, catching my scent. I reached out with my magic, not to control, but to connect. It was a technique my mother had taught me, allowing horses to sense my intentions. "Are you sure about this, girl?" the announcer asked, genuine concern in his voice. "He's already injured 3 men today." "Open the gate," I replied, never breaking eye contact with the stallion. The moment I stepped into the pen, the atmosphere changed. The crowd fell silent, sensing something different in this attempt. The stallion and I began a slow dance of sorts, each reading the other's movements. I could feel Alaric's eyes on me, along with hundreds of others, but they didn't matter. This moment was between me and this magnificent creature before me. As I moved closer, I began to hum an old lullaby my mother used to sing in the stables. The stallion's ears twitched, recognizing the calming melody. The stallion and I continued our silent communication, each step carefully measured. I kept humming, letting my magic flow gently around us both. His coat shimmered in the sunlight as he watched me, his previous aggression replaced by cautious interest. "That's it, beautiful," I whispered. "No ropes, no force, just you and me." I was close enough now to see the flecks of silver in his dark eyes. He lowered his head slightly, and I felt the shift in his energy. He was ready. In one fluid motion, I placed my hand on his neck and swung myself onto his back. The crowd gasped, expecting him to buck wildly as he had with the others. Instead, he remained still, his muscles tense but controlled. "Show me what you can do," I whispered in his ear, gently squeezing with my legs. He responded immediately, breaking into a graceful canter around the pen. His movements were pure poetry, powerful yet precise, each stride perfectly balanced. "Impossible," I heard Alaric mutter from the sidelines. "She must be using some kind of trick." The stallion and I moved as one, performing increasingly complex maneuvers. I could feel his joy in the movement, his delight at finally being understood rather than dominated. When the 5 minutes were up, I didn't want to stop, and neither did he. "Remarkable!" The announcer's voice broke through our shared moment. "In all my years, I've never seen anything like it." "The prize is yours, young lady." I dismounted smoothly, keeping one hand on the stallion's neck. The crowd erupted in applause, but their reaction meant nothing compared to the gentle nuzzle I received from my new companion. "What will you name him?" someone called out. I studied the magnificent creature beside me. "Starweaver," I decided, "for his mane that catches the light like stars in motion." "A fitting name," a new voice said, and I turned to see an elderly man approaching. His robes marked him as a master of the horse guild. "You have quite a gift, young lady. Where did you learn such horsemanship?" I tensed, aware of the dangerous territory this conversation was entering. "My mother taught me," I replied carefully. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Did she now? His eyes twinkled knowingly. "And would your mother happen to be Lady Meridia of the Western Estates? The only other person I've ever seen use that particular technique of magical bonding with horses?" My heart stopped. One careless moment, one familiar technique, and my cover was already threatening to unravel. Before I could respond, Alaric pushed his way through the crowd. "Lady Meridia's daughter? That's impossible. She's just someone who understands horses better than you, my lord," I cut in sharply. "Isn't that enough?" The Horse Guild master's eyes sparkled with amusement as tension filled the air around us. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private," he suggested, gesturing toward a nearby tent. "My name is Master Theron, and I believe we have much to discuss." I glanced at Starweaver, who nudged me reassuringly. "Lead the way, Master Theron." "This is a private matter," I told Alaric firmly when he tried to follow. His face reddened, but the presence of the guildmaster prevented him from making a scene. The tent was comfortably furnished with chairs and a small table. Master Theron poured 2 cups of tea before settling into his seat. "Your mother was a dear friend of mine," he said without preamble. "We studied together at the magic school before she married into nobility. Her way with horses was legendary." "You knew her well, then?" I couldn't keep the eagerness from my voice. Despite my caution, any connection to my mother was precious. Well enough to recognize her techniques in your performance today. Well enough to know that her younger daughter, not her heir, was the one she trained in secret. He took a sip of tea. Well enough to wonder why that daughter is now in Kivir, dressed as a commoner. I studied my cup, weighing my options. This man could expose me, but something in his manner suggested he wouldn't. What gave me away? Besides the horse bonding technique? He chuckled. "Your posture, primarily. You can dress like a commoner, but you carry yourself like nobility. And then there's your magic, subtle but present. Like your mother's, it has a distinctive signature." "Will you report me?" I asked directly. "To whom? Your family?" He shook his head. "I may be old, but I'm not blind. If you're here alone, dressed like this, there's a reason. Meridia would want me to help you, not hinder you." Relief flooded through me. "I'm trying to reach the capital," I admitted. "The magic school." "Ah," he nodded. "Following in your mother's footsteps, after all. But you'll need more than just a horse to make that journey safely." He reached into a drawer and pulled out a sealed letter. "Take this. It's a letter of introduction to Madame Roselle, who runs an inn in the merchant district of the capital. She's discreet, and she owes me a favor. Why would you help me? Because Meridia would have wanted me to, and because talent like yours shouldn't be wasted hiding from whatever drove you from home. He paused, then added, but be careful. That young nobleman, Alaric, he's more than he appears. His family has deep connections in the capital. I left Master Theron's tent with the letter safely tucked away in my bag, my mind racing with new possibilities and concerns. Star Weaver followed close behind, his presence already a comfort I hadn't expected to find in this city. Your little performance was quite impressive. Alaric's voice cut through my thoughts. He was leaning against a post, his clothes still bearing evidence of his earlier fall. Though I suspect there's more to your story than you're letting on. Not everyone needs a noble pedigree to have skill, my lord, I replied, keeping my voice steady. Some of us simply work hard to master our crafts. He pushed away from the post, moving closer. Indeed. And some of us are terrible liars. Your technique with that horse, that was old magic. The kind taught only in certain circles. His eyes narrowed. The kind my family has studied for generations. I felt a chill run down my spine. Master Theron's warning about Alaric's connections suddenly seemed more urgent. I'm not sure what you're implying. Let me be direct then, he lowered his voice. You're running from something, or someone. Your clothes say commoner, but your bearing screams nobility. You're trained in ancient magical techniques, yet you're competing in public horse fairs for prize money. You seem very interested in my affairs, my lord. Should I be flattered or concerned? His lips curved into an unexpected smile. Neither. Consider me intrigued. You see, I'm also heading to the capital, to the magic school specifically. Perhaps we could travel together? I prefer to travel alone. The road to the capital is dangerous these days. Strange creatures have been seen in the forests, and bandits grow bolder by the week. He paused, studying my reaction. Of course, if you're as skilled with defensive magic as you are with horses, perhaps you don't need protection. The trap in his words was obvious. If I refused too strongly, I'd confirm his suspicions about my magical abilities. If I accepted, I'd be under his observation for the entire journey. Your concern is touching, I said carefully, but I can manage. A commotion from the city gates interrupted us. Guards were gathering, and I could hear shouting. Through the crowd, I caught fragments of their conversation, spotted near the northern road. Dark creatures, travelers warned. The crowd near the gates grew larger, and the guards' voices became clearer. 3 merchant caravans attacked in the past week. Dark creatures emerging from the shadows themselves. No one travels alone. I exchanged a glance with Alaric, whose smug expression told me he'd anticipated this development. The northern road was the main route to the capital, the very path I needed to take. Still planning to travel alone? He asked quietly. Before I could respond, Master Theron emerged from his tent. Ah, the shadow beasts have returned, I see. He turned to me with concern. These creatures are drawn to magical energy, my dear. A solitary magic user would be quite appetizing to them. Then perhaps my Lord Alaric should also reconsider traveling alone, I countered, noting how his eyes widened slightly at my implication that I knew he possessed magical abilities. Actually, Master Theron interjected, I have a proposition for both of you. The Horse Guild maintains regular caravans to the capital, transporting valuable breeding stock. Our next one leaves tomorrow at dawn. We could use 2 skilled riders who happen to be magically inclined. The offer was perfect, safer than traveling alone, but without the intense scrutiny of traveling solely with Alaric. Yet, I could see the young nobleman's jaw tighten in displeasure. Clearly, he'd hoped to have me isolated and under his observation. I accept, I said quickly. Starweaver and I would be honored to help, as would I, Alaric added smoothly, though his expression suggested otherwise, though I hadn't planned to leave quite so soon. Excellent, Master Theron clapped his hands. Meet at the northern stables before sunrise. And my dear, he turned to me, I have a spare room at the Guildhall where you can spend the night. More comfortable than an inn, and safer too. I caught his meaning. He was offering protection not just from the physical dangers of the city, but from Alaric's prying eyes as well. As I followed Master Theron toward the Guildhall, leading Starweaver, I felt Alaric's gaze burning into my back. He was right about one thing. I was terrible at lying. But perhaps I didn't need to lie. Perhaps I just needed to survive long enough to reach the magic school where my power would be my protection. Remember, Master Theron whispered as we walked, trust your instincts, but guard your secrets. The road to the capital is long, and young Lord Alaric isn't the only one with hidden motives. Chapter 3. Dawn painted the sky in hues of pink and gold as the caravan assembled at the northern gates of Kaelara. Master Theron had arranged everything perfectly. 6 wagons loaded with prized horses, a dozen guards, and various guild members who would handle the trading aspects of the journey. I adjusted Starweaver's saddle, grateful for the night's rest at the guild hall. The magnificent stallion seemed to sense the importance of our journey, standing proudly. As I checked his tack one final time, his silver mane caught the early morning light, creating an ethereal effect that drew admiring glances from the other travelers. Quite the change from yesterday's street rat, Alaric's voice came from behind me. He sat atop a magnificent bay stallion, his noble bearing more pronounced than ever in his traveling clothes. The guild's provisions suit you better than rags. He wasn't wrong. Master Theron had insisted on providing me with proper riding attire. Sturdy leather breeches, a well-fitted tunic, and boots that actually kept out the water. The clothes were practical rather than fancy, but they were far better than my disguise from yesterday. The caravan will follow the northern road for 3 days before turning east toward the capital, Master Theron announced, riding up beside us. We'll be passing through the Shadow Woods. That's where most of the attacks have been reported. These shadow beasts, I began carefully. What exactly are they? The old master's expression grew serious. No one knows for certain. They started appearing about a month ago, dark creatures that seem to step out of the shadows themselves. They don't attack everyone, mind you. Just those with magical ability. How convenient, Alaric muttered, shooting me a pointed look. Almost as if someone wanted to make the road particularly dangerous for magic users traveling to the capital. Your paranoia is showing, my lord, I replied sweetly, though his words echoed my own suspicions. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. Movement in groups is our best defense, Master Theron continued. The creatures seem reluctant to attack large parties. That's why we've doubled our usual guard complement. He lowered his voice. And why I've positioned our 2 young magic users in the middle of the formation. The gates creaked open, and the caravan began to move. I found myself riding between 2 wagons with Alaric similarly positioned on the other side of the formation, close enough to help if needed, but far enough apart to maintain my distance from his prying questions. As we left the city behind, I caught sight of a familiar figure watching from the battlements. The guildmaster's expression was unreadable at this distance, but I could have sworn he was performing some kind of blessing gesture. The first day of travel passed without incident, though tension hung in the air like storm clouds gathering. The guards maintained constant vigilance, their hands never far from their weapons. I noticed they paid particular attention to the shadows cast by the passing trees, as if expecting them to come alive at any moment. By midday, we'd settled into a rhythm. The wagon drivers sang old traveling songs, their voices carrying across the convoy. Even some of the horses joined in, nickering along with the familiar tunes. Starweaver, however, remained alert, his ears constantly moving to track every sound in our surroundings. Your mount seems unusually perceptive, one of the guards commented during our brief rest stop. Most horses we transport are high-strung, but he's different. He understands more than most give him credit for, I replied, feeding Starweaver an apple for my provisions. The guard nodded and moved on, but I caught Alaric watching the exchange with keen interest from his position several wagons away. As afternoon faded into evening, the landscape began to change. The well-maintained road gave way to older stones, and the friendly deciduous trees were gradually replaced by ancient pines that seemed to reach for the sky with gnarled fingers. Their shadows stretched longer and darker than they should have. "We'll make camp here," Master Theron announced, pointing to a clearing just off the road. "The Shadow Woods begin properly tomorrow, so we all need our rest tonight." The caravan transformed into a well-organized campsite within an hour. Wagons were arranged in a circle, horses tethered inside the perimeter, and guards posted at regular intervals. I helped set up the defensive wards, simple magic that would alert us to any approaching danger. "Your wand work is precise," Alaric observed, appearing beside me as I finished the last ward, almost as if he'd had formal training. "Anyone can learn from books," I deflected, though I knew my technique betrayed years of proper instruction. "Books?" He laughed softly. "Those movements are distinctly Western estate style. I should know, my family has been trying to replicate their techniques for generations." Before I could respond, a commotion erupted from the eastern edge of camp. One of the guards was pointing into the gathering darkness, his voice tight with alarm. There, in the shadows, something moved. Everyone in the camp froze, straining to see into the deepening darkness. The guard's warning had triggered an immediate response. Weapons were drawn, and protective circles began forming around the horses. Starweaver's muscles tensed beneath me as I mounted, ready for whatever might come. "There's definitely something out there," Alaric muttered, his own mount shifting nervously. "Can you feel it? The magic in the air feels wrong." He was right. The natural flow of magical energy that usually permeated the world had become distorted, like ripples in a pond when something dark moves beneath the surface. The shadows between the trees seemed to writhe with unnatural life. "Form up." Master Theron's command cut through the tension. "Magic users to the center, guards on the perimeter." "Whatever's out there, it's testing our defenses." I guided Starweaver into position, noting how the other horses grew increasingly agitated. Only he remained steady, though his ears were pinned flat against his head. Through our magical bond, I could sense his awareness of the danger and his determination to face it. "The wards," Alaric called out suddenly. "They're being drained." I felt it too. The protective spells we'd cast were weakening, their energy being siphoned away by something in the darkness. The shadows between the trees had grown impossibly deep, defying the light from our campfires. Then we saw them, forms taking shape within the darkness itself. They moved like liquid night, their edges blurring and reforming as they approached. I counted at least 5 distinct shapes, each roughly the size of a large wolf, but their forms were too fluid to be natural creatures. "Hold the line." Master Theron's voice carried authority and power. "Focus your magic on reinforcing the wards." I reached for my power, preparing to strengthen the defensive spells, but something felt wrong. The creatures weren't just draining the wards. They were somehow using that energy to grow stronger. Each attempt to reinforce our magical defenses seemed to make them more substantial. "Stop," I called out. "The magic, they're feeding on it." Alaric caught my eye across the camp, and I saw understanding dawn on his face. Without a word, we both began drawing back our power, letting the wards fade naturally rather than fighting to maintain them. The shadow creatures paused in their advance, seemingly confused by the change in strategy. In that moment of hesitation, I noticed something crucial. They weren't just drawn to magic, they were dependent on it. As our active spells diminished, their forms became less distinct. "The fires," I shouted. "They're pure physical light, no magic involved. Push them toward the shadows." The guards quickly caught on to my suggestion, grabbing burning branches from the campfires. The shadow creatures recoiled from the pure, non-magical light, their forms becoming less substantial where the firelight touched them. "Everyone without magic, take the torches," Master Theron commanded. "Form a barrier of light. Magic users, stay back, no spells, no matter what happens." It was harder than I expected, holding back my power when every instinct screamed to defend myself with magic. Beside me, I could see Alaric struggling with the same restraint, his hands clenched tightly on his horse's reins. "The horses," he said suddenly. "They're trying to spook them." He was right. The shadow creatures had begun slithering between the wagon wheels, causing the tethered horses to panic. Only Starweaver remained calm, though I could feel his muscles trembling with the effort of restraining his natural flight response. "They're hurting us," I realized, watching the pattern of their movements, trying to separate the magical energy sources, us, from the protection of the group. "Clever observation," Alaric admitted. "But knowing their strategy doesn't help if we can't use magic to defend ourselves." A plan began forming in my mind. Maybe we don't need magic. What we need is to turn their own strategy against them. I turned to Master Theron. The shadow creatures are drawn to magical energy, right? So let's give them what they want, just not what they expected. Understanding dawned in the old master's eyes. You're suggesting we use ourselves as bait? Not exactly, I explained quickly. Those wards we set up, they're still charged with residual magic. If we could somehow concentrate that energy in one spot, away from the camp, we could draw them away from the horses and the non-magical members of our group, Alaric finished, nodding appreciatively. But how do we move the ward energy without actively using magic? I smiled, patting Starweaver's neck. We don't move it. We just need to make the existing magic more appealing. Without actively channeling magic, I began humming the same melody I'd used to calm Starweaver during the horse fair. The residual energy in the ward seemed to resonate with the sound, creating a subtle harmonic effect that made the magical traces more pronounced. The northeastern ward, Alaric whispered, catching on. It's responding more strongly than the others. Because it's where the ley lines cross, Master Theron confirmed. The natural magic in the earth is amplifying the effect. The shadow creatures noticed too. Their fluid forms began shifting toward the northeastern corner of our camp, drawn by the concentrated magical energy. As they moved, the pressure on our horses lessened. Now, I called out, push them back with the fire. The guards advanced with their torches, driving the creatures further toward the resonating ward. The shadows tried to resist, but caught between the pure light of the fires and the alluring pull of the concentrated magic. They had no choice but to retreat. Keep the circle tight, Alaric commanded, proving he had some leadership skills beneath his arrogant exterior. Don't let them slip through. The plan was working. The shadow creatures were being herded exactly where we wanted them. But just as victory seemed within reach, something unexpected happened. The northeastern ward didn't just attract the creatures, it began to unravel. The resonance is too strong, Master Theron shouted. The ward is collapsing. The magical energy released from the failing ward created a sudden surge that the shadow creatures absorbed hungrily. Their forms grew more substantial, more threatening. What had been vaguely wolf-like shapes now resembled something far more ancient and terrible. Everyone back. I yelled, but it was too late. The largest of the shadow creatures lunged forward, passing straight through one of the guards' torches, as if the fire no longer affected it. In that moment of crisis, I made a decision that would change everything. Breaking my own rule about not using active magic, I reached deep into the bond I shared with Starweaver. Together, we created something neither light nor shadow, a pulse of pure life force that rippled outward from us. The shadow creatures recoiled as if struck. Their borrowed power seemed to dissolve, leaving them once again vulnerable to the torchlight. Within moments, they retreated into the darkness of the forest, their forms dissipating like smoke in the wind. That was unexpected, Alaric said quietly, staring at me with new respect and curiosity. What exactly did you do? I'm not entirely sure, I admitted, though I had my suspicions. My mother had once told me about an ancient form of magic that came from the connection between rider and horse, something older and purer than the structured spells taught in schools. Master Theron was watching me with an unreadable expression. Perhaps, he said carefully, there are some secrets best left unexplained for now. Chapter 4. The aftermath of our encounter with the shadow creatures left the camp in a state of uneasy quiet. No one slept much that night, and when dawn finally broke, its pale light revealed dark circles under everyone's eyes. Yet there was something else in their expressions, too, a newfound respect when they looked at me, mixed with barely concealed curiosity about what had happened. Master Theron announced we would rest for the morning to recover our strength and tend to the horses. I used this time to examine Starweaver thoroughly, worried that our shared magical exertion might have affected him. To my relief, he seemed more energized than exhausted, as if our connection had somehow strengthened both of us. Your horse is quite remarkable, Alaric said, approaching with 2 steaming cups of tea. He offered one to me, and I accepted it cautiously, much like his rider. Are we finally moving past the street rat comments? I asked, taking a sip of the surprisingly good tea. He smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. Let's say I'm reassessing my initial judgments. What you did last night, That wasn't standard magic. It wasn't even advanced magic. It was something else entirely. Perhaps you should focus on your own mysteries, my lord, I suggested, like why you're really traveling to the capital. Surely the heir to the northern estates has better things to do than attend magic school? His expression hardened slightly. We all have our secrets, don't we? Though some are better at keeping them than others. He glanced meaningfully at my hands, which were wrapped around the warm cup. Your ring, for instance, you've been careful to keep it hidden, but I caught a glimpse of it last night. That's a noble house signet, isn't it? I instinctively touched the ring beneath my sleeve, my mother's ring, the one thing I couldn't bear to leave behind when I fled. You see what you want to see, my lord. What I see, he said quietly, is someone running toward something, not away from it. The question is, what's at the magic school that's worth risking everything for? Before I could respond, Master Theron called everyone together. There's a place nearby, a magical grotto, where we can rest and restore our energy. It's slightly off our planned route, but after last night, I think we could all use its rejuvenating properties. A grotto? One of the guards asked skeptically. Is it safe? Safer than staying in the open, Master Theron replied. The grotto is naturally warded against dark magic. Those creatures won't be able to follow us there. As we prepared to move out, I noticed Alaric watching me with that same calculating expression. He knew I was hiding something significant, and last night's display had only intensified his interest. The grotto might offer protection from shadow creatures, but I was beginning to wonder if the real danger was much closer at hand. The path to the grotto led us deeper into the forest, away from the main road. The trees here were ancient, their trunks wider than wagon wheels, their branches forming a dense canopy overhead. Shafts of sunlight pierced through occasionally, creating patterns on the forest floor that seemed to shift and dance as we moved. The grotto has been here since before the First Age, Master Theron explained as we rode. Legend says it was created when a star fell to Earth and its magic seeped into the ground. The truth is probably less dramatic, but its power is undeniable. I've heard stories, Alaric added, guiding his horse closer to mine. They say the waters can show you visions of possible futures or reveal hidden truths, Master Theron said meaningfully, his eyes flickering between Alaric and me. The grotto has a way of bringing secrets to the surface. I felt Starweaver tense beneath me, and through our bond, I sensed his awareness of something ahead. The air had changed, becoming thick with magical energy, not the corrupted feeling from last night, but something pure and ancient. There! Master Theron pointed to a cliff face partially hidden by vines. The entrance is behind those falls. As we drew closer, I could see that what looked like a normal waterfall was actually flowing in impossible patterns, the water sometimes moving upward against gravity. The vines parted at our approach, responding to the residual magic that clung to us after last night's encounter. The wagons and most of the horses will need to stay here, Master Theron announced. Only those with magical abilities should enter. The energy inside can be overwhelming for those without the gift. I dismounted, but kept my hand on Starweaver's neck, reluctant to leave him. To my surprise, Master Theron nodded approvingly. Your mount should come. He's as much a part of your magic as you are. The entrance behind the waterfall revealed a tunnel that seemed to glow with its own soft light. As our small group, Master Theron, Alaric, myself, Starweaver, and 2 other guild members with magical ability, made our way inside, the air became increasingly charged with energy. The grotto responds to each visitor differently, Master Theron warned. Don't fight what it shows you. The visions are meant to guide, not harm. The tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber that took my breath away. Crystal formations rose from floor to ceiling, each one pulsing with different colored light. A pool of water in the center seemed to contain all the stars of the night sky, its surface occasionally rippling with images I couldn't quite make out. Beautiful, I whispered, and the crystals seemed to pulse in response to my voice. And dangerous, Alaric added softly. Places of pure magic like this, they have a way of stripping away pretense. Are you ready for what it might reveal about you? Master Theron guided us deeper into the chamber, his footsteps echoing softly against the crystalline floor. The pool is the heart of the grotto, he explained. Its waters contain memories of all who've come before and visions of what might be. But remember, the future it shows is not fixed. It merely reveals possibilities. Starweaver moved closer to the pool, his hooves making musical sounds against the crystal-studded ground. The water seemed to respond to his presence, swirling with increasing intensity. Through our bond, I could feel his fascination with the magical energies surrounding us. Each crystal formation represents a different aspect of magic, Master Theron continued. The blue ones resonate with healing energies, the green with nature magic, the purple with divination. And the black ones? Alaric asked, pointing to a cluster of dark crystals that seemed to absorb light rather than emit it. Those represent the shadows we all carry within us, Master Theron replied gravely. Even the purest magic has its darker aspects. The grotto shows us both light and shadow, forcing us to confront our whole selves. I approached the pool, drawn by its mysterious depths. The surface was like liquid starlight, and as I gazed into it, the water began to shift and change. Images formed and dissolved, a familiar estate house burning in the night, my sister's face twisted with rage, the magic school's towers rising against a stormy sky. And something else, a darkness gathering at the edges of the vision, threatening to consume everything. What do you see? Alaric's voice was unexpectedly gentle. I hesitated, not wanting to reveal too much. I see possibilities. Some beautiful, some terrible. The grotto shows what we need to see, not always what we want to see, Master Theron said. Look deeper, both of you. Let the waters guide you. As if responding to his words, the pool's surface erupted with new images. I saw myself standing in the magic school's great hall, power flowing through me in ways I'd never imagined. But the vision shifted, showing Alaric standing before his family, defending. Me? The images became more confused. Shadow creatures emerging from the walls of the school, my mother's ring glowing with ancient power, Starweaver surrounded by magical light. The visions are stronger than usual, Master Theron observed. Something is coming, something that will affect all of you. Suddenly, Starweaver snorted in alarm. The crystals around us began to pulse more intensely, their light creating intricate patterns in the air. The pool's surface became turbulent, its images merging and separating in a dizzying display. The grotto is responding to your combined presence, Master Theron said urgently. Your destinies are somehow intertwined. The water in the pool began to churn more violently, its starlit surface now a maelstrom of images and energy. Through the chaos, I saw something that made my blood run cold. My sister Nyala, standing before the magic school's council, revealing secrets that could destroy everything I'd worked for. The visions are becoming unstable, Master Theron warned, his voice tight with concern. Something's interfering with the grotto's natural balance. The black crystals Alaric had noticed earlier began to pulse with an ominous rhythm, their darkness seeming to reach out like tendrils of shadow. Starweaver moved protectively closer to me, his presence steadying my racing thoughts. It's the residual energy from the shadow creatures, Alaric realized, moving to stand beside me. We brought traces of it with us, and it's reacting with the grotto's magic. I could feel it too. The same corrupted energy from last night, but now it was being amplified by the grotto's power. The visions in the pool became darker, more threatening. The magic school in ruins, shadow creatures pouring through its halls, and at the center of it all, a figure wearing my mother's ring. We need to leave, I said urgently. But Master Theron shook his head. The grotto won't let us go until it's shown what we need to see. Look deeper, there's something important here. Fighting my instinct to flee, I forced myself to focus on the churning waters. The images shifted again, and I saw something unexpected. Alaric and me, standing back to back in the magic school's great hall, our powers somehow merged, creating a barrier against the encroaching darkness. The vision was so clear, so specific, that it felt more like a memory than a possible future. Our magic, Alaric whispered, clearly seeing the same vision, or it's compatible. That's why the grotto is reacting so strongly to our presence. More than compatible, Master Theron corrected. It's complementary. The grotto is showing us that your powers are meant to work together, to face something that neither of you could handle alone. The black crystals pulsed again, and new images flooded the pool. My sister's betrayal, Alaric's family secrets, the shadow creature's true nature, all connected by threads of destiny that the grotto was trying to reveal. Suddenly, Starweaver reared up, his hooves striking crystalline chimes through the air. Through our bond, I felt his urgent warning. The corrupted energy was growing stronger, threatening to overwhelm the grotto's natural balance. "The visions are becoming too intense," Master Theron shouted over the increasing hum of magical energy. "We need to stabilize them before." Before he could finish, the black crystals erupted with dark energy, sending shadows dancing across the chamber walls. The pool's surface became a whirlpool of images, each one more devastating than the last: the magic school under siege, ancient wards failing, and a darkness older than the grotto itself awakening. "Join hands," Master Theron commanded. "Form a circle around the pool. We need to contain this." Without hesitation, I grabbed Alaric's hand on one side and Master Theron's on the other. The moment our circle was complete, I felt power surge through us. Not just our individual magic, but something deeper, more primal. Starweaver pressed his forehead against my shoulder, adding his own unique energy to the mix. "The grotto is trying to show us something crucial," Master Theron said through gritted teeth. "Something about all of you, your past, your future, your true purpose." The visions in the pool suddenly crystallized into a single clear image: my mother's ring, Alaric's family crest, and a third symbol I didn't recognize, all forming a triangle of power around what looked like an ancient seal. "That's impossible," Alaric gasped. "That's the Shadowbinder's seal. It was destroyed centuries ago." "Not destroyed," Master Theron corrected, his voice strained. "Hidden. And now it's awakening again, calling to those with the power to either release or contain it." The image shifted one final time, showing me and Alaric standing before the seal, our combined magic either breaking or reinforcing it. The vision wasn't clear which, but what was clear was that our destinies were now irrevocably intertwined. With a sudden flash of light, the grotto's energy stabilized. The black crystals stopped pulsing, and the pool's surface became calm once more, though faint images still swirled in its depths. "Well," Alaric said quietly, still holding my hand, "I suppose this explains why I felt compelled to follow you to the magic school, though I suspect neither of us anticipated this particular development." "The grotto has shown us a possibility," Master Theron cautioned. "What you do with this knowledge is up to you. But remember, some secrets are better kept hidden until the right moment." As we prepared to leave the grotto, I caught one last glimpse in the pool, an image of myself wearing my mother's ring proudly, no longer hiding who I truly was. But beside that image was another, shadows gathering around the magic school, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Chapter 5. The journey from the grotto back to the main road was silent, each of us lost in contemplation of what we'd witnessed. The visions hung in my mind like fragments of a dream, too vivid to dismiss, too complex to fully understand. Starweaver seemed equally affected, his usual steady gait now carrying an almost ceremonial quality. As our caravan resumed its path toward the capital, I noticed subtle changes in how the others treated me and Alaric. The guards maintained a respectful distance, while the other magic users kept stealing glances at us when they thought we weren't looking. Master Theron had warned them not to discuss what happened in the grotto, but the shift in dynamics was unmistakable. "We should talk about what we saw," Alaric said quietly, guiding his horse alongside mine as the afternoon sun painted long shadows across the road. "That seal, if it's really the Shadowbinder's seal." "Not here," I cut him off, glancing meaningfully at the others within earshot. "Some revelations are better left for safer locations." He nodded, understanding the wisdom and discretion. "The magic school, then. We'll have privacy there, assuming we both pass the entrance examinations." "Worried about your chances, my lord?" I couldn't resist teasing him. "Hardly," he smirked, though there was less arrogance in it than before, "though I admit your display of power in the grotto was impressive. You've had formal training, haven't you? And not just any training, Western estate style like I suspected." I kept my expression neutral, though internally I cursed his perceptiveness. "You seem very interested in my background, Lord Alaric." One might wonder why the heir to the northern estates is so curious about a common traveler. Common? He laughed softly. Your mother's ring says otherwise. And after what we saw in the grotto, he leaned closer, lowering his voice. Our families are connected somehow. The vision showed that clearly enough. Before I could respond, Master Theron called for the caravan to halt. We'd reached the crest of a hill, and spread out before us was the capital city of Luminara, its white towers gleaming in the late afternoon sun. The magic school's spires rose above everything else, their crystalline surfaces catching the light and refracting it in rainbow patterns across the sky. Beautiful, isn't it? Master Theron said, riding up beside us. But notice the shadows between the towers. Even here in the heart of magical learning, darkness finds its place. Remember what you saw in the grotto, both light and shadow have their purpose. The descent into Luminara took us through increasingly grand neighborhoods, each one showcasing a different aspect of magical society. Merchant quarters where enchanted items floated in shop windows, residential areas where houses shifted and changed shape according to their inhabitants' needs, and finally, the academic district, dominated by the towering spires of the magic school itself. The entrance examinations begin tomorrow at dawn, Master Theron informed us as we approached the school's outer gates. Tonight, you'll stay in the candidates' quarters. I suggest you both rest well. The tests are designed to challenge even the most prepared applicants. I felt Starweaver's anxiety mirror my own as we passed through the gates. The magical barriers surrounding the school were palpable, ancient wards that seemed to evaluate each person who entered. Through our bond, I could sense how the wards recognized something in Starweaver, an echo of the power we'd shared in the grotto. Your horse, one of the stable masters approached us, eyeing Starweaver with professional interest. He's not ordinary, is he? Few things about our new candidates are ordinary, Master Theron intervened smoothly. The horse stays with his rider. School tradition allows for special accommodations in cases of magical bonding. The stablemaster's eyes widened slightly, but he nodded and directed us to a private stable attached to the candidates' quarters. As I settled Starweaver in, Alaric lingered nearby, obviously wanting to continue our earlier conversation. The wards recognized you, he said quietly. Both of you. I saw how they reacted. That's not normal, even for magically gifted candidates. The wards are ancient, I deflected. Who knows how they choose to react to different types of magic? Stop playing games. He stepped closer, his voice intense, but not unkind. After what we saw in the grotto, we both know there's more at stake here than just passing entrance exams. The Shadowbinder's seal, our family's connection, the darkness gathering around the school. We need to trust each other. I studied him for a long moment, weighing my options. The grotto's visions had indeed suggested our destinies were intertwined, but years of keeping secrets weren't easily overcome. Before I could respond, however, a commotion at the main entrance caught our attention. A group of new arrivals was causing quite a stir. Among them, I recognized a familiar face that made my blood run cold. My sister Nyala had arrived, her presence here threatening everything I'd planned. Nyala's presence sent waves of whispers through the gathered candidates. She had always commanded attention, her beauty and magical prowess making her the darling of Western estate society. But now, seeing her here, I noticed something different about her, a hardness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Your sister? Alaric asked quietly, though from his tone it was clear he already knew the answer. The grotto showed her too, didn't it? In those visions of betrayal. I pulled him deeper into Starweaver's stall, away from prying eyes and ears. Yes, Nyala is my sister, and yes, she was in the visions. But it's complicated. She doesn't know I'm here, or at least, she shouldn't. Yet here she is, Alaric observed. Just as the grotto predicted. Perhaps it's time you told me the full story. What really happened at the Western estate? Through our bond, I felt Starweaver's encouragement. He had always been good at reading people, and his instincts about Alaric seemed positive. Taking a deep breath, I made a decision. The night I left, I began quietly. I overheard Nyala and my former betrothed, Isidore, plotting. They planned to discredit me before the family council, to have me declared magically unstable. With me out of the way, Nyala would inherit not just the estate, but also our mother's position in the magical hierarchy. And the ring? Alaric gestured to where it lay hidden beneath my sleeve. It's more than just a signet ring. It's a key to what, exactly, I'm not sure. But my mother told me to guard it with my life. She said when the time was right, I'd understand its true purpose. I glanced toward the entrance where Nyala was still holding court among the other candidates. I think that's why they really want me gone. The ring chose me as its bearer, not Nyala. She's never forgiven me for that. Alaric absorbed this information with surprising calm. And now the grotto has shown us that ring is somehow connected to the Shadowbinder's seal. Your sister's presence here can't be a coincidence. Nothing about this is coincidence, I agreed. The question is, what do we do about it? Before Alaric could respond, a bell tolled across the school grounds, its sound infused with magical resonance. Master Theron appeared at the stable entrance, his expression grave. The headmistress requests your presence, he announced. Both of you. It seems your arrival has caused quite a stir among the senior faculty. As we followed Master Theron through the school's winding corridors, I couldn't help but marvel at the architecture. The interior was even more impressive than the external spires, floating staircases, walls that rippled like water, and windows that showed different views depending on the viewer's magical affinity. The school was built during the Age of Enlightenment, Master Theron explained as we walked. Each stone was placed with purpose, creating a living network of magical energy. The building itself is part of your education, if you know how to listen to it. We arrived at a massive door made of what appeared to be liquid silver. Symbols and runes danced across its surface, rearranging themselves continuously. Master Theron placed his hand on the door, and it dissolved, revealing the headmistress's office beyond. Headmistress Valorian stood at a window that showed an impossible view of all of Luminara at once. She was younger than I'd expected, but her eyes held centuries of wisdom, and standing beside her, to my horror, was Nyala. Ah, our unexpected candidates. The headmistress turned, her gaze piercing through any pretense of anonymity I might have maintained. Or should I say, the lost heir of the western estate and the rebellious scion of the northern lands. Alaric tensed beside me but kept his composure. Headmistress, we came to earn our places here honestly through the entrance examinations. Did you? Nyala's voice dripped with false concern. Dear sister, running away from home, stealing mother's ring, and now attempting to enter the school under false pretenses? What would our parents say? They would say, I replied steadily, drawing strength from my bond with Starweaver even at this distance, that the ring chooses its bearer, as it chose me. The headmistress raised an eyebrow. Indeed. And what of the visions you experienced in the grotto? Master Theron has informed me of their unusual nature. The grotto's visions, I said carefully, showed many possible futures, but more importantly, they revealed a connection between ancient magic and current events, including the Shadowbinder's seal. The headmistress's expression sharpened. So, you know of the seal. She moved to an ornate cabinet and withdrew what appeared to be an ancient scroll. This document speaks of 3 magical artifacts that, when combined, either maintain or break the seal's power. Your mother's ring is one of them. That's why you fled with it, Nyala accused. You knew its importance and wanted to keep its power for yourself. I fled because you and Isidore planned to declare me unstable, I countered. The ring chose me, Nyala. I'm its rightful bearer, whether you accept that or not. Enough, the headmistress commanded. The situation is more complex than family rivalries. The shadow creatures you encountered on your journey here, they're only the beginning. The seal is weakening, and dark forces are gathering. The grotto showed you this truth, did it not? Alaric stepped forward. Headmistress, the vision suggested that our combined magic, mine and hers, might be crucial in what's to come. That's why we're here. Not to hide, but to learn how to use our powers effectively. The headmistress studied us both for a long moment. Master Theron reported that your magical signatures are remarkably complementary. Such compatibility is rare and potentially powerful. She turned to Nyala. Your sister will remain here, as will Lord Alaric. The entrance examinations will proceed as planned, but under close observation. But, Nyala began to protest. "This is not a matter for debate." The headmistress's voice held steel. "Dark times are coming, and we need every advantage we can muster. If the grotto has shown these two a path forward, we would be fools to ignore it." As we left the office, Nyala caught my arm. "This isn't over, sister. The ring belongs to our family, not just to you. And there are others who agree with me." "Others like Isidore?" I asked quietly. "Or perhaps those who seek to break the seal rather than protect it." Her expression flickered for just a moment, revealing something that confirmed my worst fears. My sister wasn't just acting out of jealousy or ambition. She was involved in something far more dangerous. Chapter 6. The candidates' quarters buzzed with nervous energy as the first day of classes approached. After the dramatic confrontation in the headmistress's office, I found myself assigned to a small but comfortable room in the eastern tower. The window offered a breathtaking view of Luminara, and, more importantly, I could see Starweaver's private stable from here. My new roommate, Viola, arrived just before sunset. She was a slight girl with silver-white hair and eyes that seemed to change color with her mood, a common trait among those from the Floating Isles. She moved with a fluid grace typical of island-born mages, but there was something else about her, something that made my magical senses tingle with recognition. "You're the one everyone's talking about," she said without preamble, setting down her bags. "The Western Estate heir who ran away and tamed a magical horse, though I suspect there's more to your story than the rumors suggest." I tensed slightly, but her tone held no judgment, only genuine curiosity. "Rumors tend to miss the important details," I replied carefully, "like why someone would leave their home and title behind, or why they would choose to room with an exile from the Floating Isles." She smiled, but there was a shadow behind it. "Oh, yes. I have my own stories. Perhaps that's why they paired us together, the runaways, the ones with secrets." Before I could respond, a knock at our door revealed Alaric, looking somewhat uncomfortable in the standard apprentice robes we'd all been issued. "The headmistress has called an assembly in the Great Hall. All candidates are required to attend." As we made our way through the school's ever-shifting corridors, I noticed other students watching us, whispering behind their hands. News of my true identity had spread quickly, it seemed. But there was something else in their gazes, a mixture of fear and anticipation, as if they sensed the larger forces at play. "Your sister is gathering quite a following," Alaric murmured as we descended a spiral staircase that hummed with magical energy. "She's been telling anyone who'll listen about how you stole your family's heritage and fled like a thief in the night." "Let her talk," I said, though my heart clenched at the thought of Nyala's influence spreading. "The ring chose me. That's all that matters." "Is it?" Viola asked quietly. "Because from what I've heard, that ring is more than just a family heirloom. On the Floating Isles, we have stories about 3 artifacts of power, keys to something ancient and dangerous." I stopped walking, studying her more carefully. "What do you know about the Shadowbinder's seal?" Viola glanced around the corridor before responding, her voice barely above a whisper. "On the Floating Isles, we have an ancient text called the Prophecy of 3 Keys. It speaks of artifacts created during the First Age, a ring, a crown, and a sword. Together, they maintain the balance between light and shadow. Apart." She shuddered slightly. "Apart, they can be used to unleash forces that should remain bound." "The Shadowbinder's seal," Alaric confirmed. "But the crown and sword were lost centuries ago." "Lost or hidden?" Viola's eyes shifted to a deep violet, reflecting her intensity. "My exile from the Isles wasn't just about political disagreements. I discovered something in the ancient archives, something about your mother's ring and its connection to the other artifacts. That's why I'm here. The school's library might hold answers that the Isles keep locked away." We entered the Great Hall, where hundreds of candidates had gathered. The ceiling was a masterpiece of magical architecture, showing the actual night sky above, but with the constellations animated and moving in complex patterns. At the front of the hall, the headmistress stood with the full faculty, including several faces I didn't recognize. "Your sister isn't the only one gathering allies," Alaric murmured, nodding toward a group of students clustered around a tall, aristocratic young man. "That's Isidore. He arrived an hour ago, claiming to represent the Western Estate's interests in magical education. My heart seemed to freeze in my chest. Isidore's presence complicated everything. He knew too much about my past, about the ring, about the real reasons I'd fled. And now he was here, already building his power base among the students. "The plot thickens," Viola observed. "Your former betrothed, I assume? He carries old magic about him, not his own, but something borrowed or stolen. It clings to him like a shadow." Before I could respond, the headmistress raised her hands for silence. The great hall immediately fell quiet, even the animated constellations above seeming to pause in their dance. "Welcome, candidates." Headmistress Valorian's voice carried effortlessly through the vast hall. "You stand here at a pivotal moment in magical history. The barriers between light and shadow grow thin, and ancient powers stir in their long slumber. Your education here will be more crucial than ever before." Her gaze swept across the assembled students, lingering briefly on me and Alaric, and finally, surprisingly, on Viola. "Some of you carry burdens greater than you know, others harbor secrets that may shape our future. All of you must learn not just to control your magic, but to understand its deeper purpose." From my position, I could see Nyala and Isidore exchange meaningful glances. Through our bond, I felt Starweaver's distant warning. Something about their energy felt wrong, tainted. Viola must have sensed it too, because her eyes shifted to a stormy gray. "The traditional house sorting will now begin," the headmistress continued. "But first, a word of caution. Dark forces gather beyond our walls. The shadow creatures some of you encountered on your journey here were merely harbingers. The school's ancient wards grow strained, and we must stand united against what comes." One of the faculty members stepped forward, carrying what appeared to be a crystal sphere filled with swirling mist. "When I call your name, approach and place your hand on the sphere of affinity. It will determine your magical resonance and assign you to one of the 4 houses: Luminara, Tyrannus, Etheria, or Umbrath." "Umbrath?" I whispered to Viola. "I thought there were only 3 houses." "The 4th house is rarely mentioned," she replied quietly. "It's for those whose magic aligns with shadow and secrets. Most consider it unfortunate to be sorted there." "Kaelara of the Western Estate," the faculty member called, and a hush fell over the hall. As I stepped forward, I could feel hundreds of eyes upon me. The ring seemed to pulse beneath my sleeve, responding to the sphere's magic. When I placed my hand on the crystal, the mist inside began to churn violently, shifting through colors I'd never seen before. The mist within the sphere continued to swirl, colors shifting between deep purple, brilliant gold, and something that seemed to absorb light itself. The faculty members exchanged concerned glances, and I heard whispers ripple through the crowd. "Impossible," someone muttered. "The sphere has never." Suddenly, the mist settled into a perfect balance of light and shadow, creating a pattern I recognized from the grotto's visions. The same symbol that had appeared alongside the Shadowbinder's seal. "Dual resonance," the headmistress announced, her voice carrying a note of both concern and fascination. "Luminara and Umbrath, the first in over 3 centuries." The hall erupted in whispers. Dual resonance was rare enough, but to bridge the houses of light and shadow, I could feel Nyala's burning gaze, and Isidore's calculating stare. This would only complicate matters further. Alaric of the Northern Estates came the next call. As Alaric stepped forward, I noticed something strange. The ring beneath my sleeve was warming, responding to his proximity to the sphere. When his hand touched the crystal, the mist immediately mirrored the pattern it had shown for me, though with slightly different proportions. "Another dual resonance," the headmistress declared. "Tyrannus and Umbrath." "The grotto was right," Viola whispered beside me. "Your magics are complementary, earth and air, light and shadow, the perfect balance for what's to come." Before the murmuring could grow louder, the headmistress raised her hand for silence. "These sortings are significant. For those versed in magical history, you'll recognize the patterns emerging. The last time we saw such resonances was during the Age of Sealing, when the Shadowbinder's power was first contained. I saw Isidore lean close to Nyala, whispering something that made her smile darkly. Whatever they were planning, this development had clearly caught their attention. "Viola of the Floating Isles," the faculty member called next. As Viola approached the sphere, the entire hall seemed to hold its breath. Her silver-white hair appeared to glow in the magical light emanating from the crystal, and when she placed her hand upon it, the mist inside began to move in ways I'd never seen before, not swirling or churning, but flowing like water in reverse, defying gravity itself. Aetheria, the sphere pronounced. But then something unexpected happened. The mist continued to move, forming shapes that resembled the ancient runes I'd seen in my mother's private library. The headmistress's eyes widened slightly, and I saw her exchange meaningful glances with several faculty members. With notable affinity for temporal magic, the headmistress added, her voice carefully neutral. A rare combination. The sorting continued, with Nyala predictably being placed in Luminara, though I noticed the sphere's reaction to her was somewhat muted compared to the dramatic displays it had shown for others. Isidore was sorted into Tyrannus, but again, something seemed off about the sphere's response, as if it was reacting to magic that wasn't entirely his own, just as Viola had observed. After the sorting concluded, the headmistress made additional announcements about class schedules and dormitory assignments. I found myself placed in a unique position. As a dual resonance student, I would split my time between Luminara and Umbrath Towers, something that hadn't been done in centuries. The balance must be maintained, the headmistress concluded, her gaze sweeping across the hall. Light and shadow, earth and air, past and future, all must find their proper place. Your studies here will help you understand these fundamental truths. As we filed out of the great hall, Viola caught my arm. We need to talk somewhere private. What I found in the Isle archives, it's about more than just the 3 artifacts. It's about what happens when the balance shifts too far in either direction. My chambers after curfew, I whispered back. Bring whatever information you have. Alaric nodded in agreement, but before we could make further plans, Isidore approached, his presence causing the ring to grow cold against my skin. Fascinating sorting ceremony, he said smoothly. Dual resonance. How very special you've become, Kaelara. Your sister sends her regards, by the way. She's quite eager to reconnect with you. Chapter 7. The first day of classes dawned with an ethereal mist clinging to the school's spires. From my window in the Luminara Tower, I watched early rising students crossing the courtyard, their apprentice robes billowing in the crisp morning air. My own dual house status meant I would alternate between the bright, airy chambers of Luminara and the shadowed halls of Umbrath, a schedule that already had tongues wagging throughout the school. Last night's meeting with Viola and Alaric had revealed disturbing information. The archives of the Floating Isles contained prophecies about the 3 artifacts, my mother's ring, the lost crown, and the mysterious sword. According to ancient texts, when all 3 items were brought together during specific celestial alignments, they could either strengthen or completely destroy the Shadowbinder's seal. Your first class is Advanced Elemental Theory with Master Calderon, Viola reminded me as she braided her silver-white hair. Her eyes had settled into a deep blue this morning, reflecting her scholarly mood. He's known for being traditional in his views about magical resonance. Traditional meaning he won't approve of my dual nature, I translated, adjusting my unique robes, black and gold, marking me as both Luminara and Umbrath. Through our bond, I could feel Starweaver's reassuring presence from his stable below. The classroom was located in one of the school's older sections, where the very stones seemed to pulse with accumulated magical energy. Students filed in, carefully segregating themselves by house, except for Alaric and me, who found ourselves in an awkward middle ground. Master Calderon swept in, his traditional master's robes adorned with elemental symbols. He was younger than I'd expected, perhaps in his early 40s, with sharp features and calculating eyes. Those eyes narrowed slightly when they fell on my dual-colored robes. Today, he announced, we will discuss the fundamental principles of magical resonance. Each of you has been sorted according to your natural affinities, light, earth, air, or, his lip curled slightly, shadow. These categories exist for a reason. They represent the natural order of magical energy. I felt the ring warm beneath my sleeve as he spoke, as if disagreeing with his rigid categorization. Beside me, Alaric tensed, likely sensing the same wrongness in the master's words. From her seat in the Luminara section, Nyala watched with barely concealed satisfaction as Master Calderon's gaze repeatedly returned to my distinctive robes with obvious disapproval. Perhaps, he continued, one of our uniquely sorted students would like to demonstrate the principle of pure resonance. Lady Kaelara, since you claim affinity with both light and shadow, surely you can show us how to properly channel pure light magic? I rose slowly, feeling every eye in the classroom upon me. The challenge in Master Calderon's voice was clear. He expected me to fail, to prove his point about the impossibility of dual resonance. But the ring beneath my sleeve pulsed with warmth, and I remembered my mother's teachings about the true nature of magic. Pure light magic, I began, raising my hands, is traditionally channeled through focused intention and clarity of purpose. I let magic flow through me, creating a sphere of golden light above my palms. Several students gasped. It was perfectly executed, exactly as the textbooks described. But then I felt something else, a deeper understanding flowing through the ring. However, I continued, my voice growing stronger, true mastery comes not from purity, but from balance. Without breaking the light spell, I allowed shadow magic to weave through it, creating an intricate pattern of light and dark that danced in perfect harmony. The effect was stunning. Rather than weakening each other, the two forces enhanced and complemented one another, creating something entirely new. Impossible, Master Calderon whispered, his facade of superiority cracking slightly. The resonances should cancel each other out. Only if you believe they must be enemies, I replied, maintaining the complex spell. But light and shadow are not opposites. They are complementary forces. One cannot exist without the other. From her seat, Nyala's face had gone pale with fury. She recognized the technique. It was one our mother had tried to teach us both, but Nyala had never managed to grasp it. Beside her, Isadora was watching with an intensity that made me uneasy. That's enough, Master Calderon snapped, though I noticed his hands trembling slightly. This is not the approved curriculum. We will stick to traditional pure resonance work. Traditional, a new voice spoke from the doorway, does not always mean correct. The entire class turned to see Headmistress Valorian standing there, her expression unreadable. Please, Lady Kaelara, continue your demonstration. I find it most illuminating. The headmistress's presence changed the entire atmosphere of the classroom. Master Calderon's face had lost all color, while the students sat straighter in their seats, aware they were witnessing something unprecedented. Your demonstration, the headmistress continued, moving to the center of the room, illustrates a principle that has been largely forgotten in modern magical education. The ancients understood that true power lies not in separation, but in synthesis. Would you explain to the class what you're doing, precisely? I took a deep breath, maintaining the intricate dance of light and shadow above my hands. The traditional approach teaches us to channel pure resonances, light separate from shadow, earth separate from air. But these forces naturally seek balance. When we allow them to interact harmoniously, they create something greater than the sum of their parts. To demonstrate, I let the energies shift and flow, forming complex patterns that reminded me of the visions in the grotto. The ring beneath my sleeve grew warmer, almost singing with approval. This is dangerous nonsense, Master Calderon protested, though his voice lacked conviction. The separation of magical resonances has been standard practice for centuries. There are good reasons. Are there? The headmistress interrupted softly. Or have we simply forgotten the older ways? The Shadowbinder's seal itself was created through the harmony of opposing forces, not their separation. At the mention of the seal, I saw Isadora lean forward intently. Nyala's hand moved to a pendant around her neck, one I'd never seen before, but which seemed to pulse with a familiar energy. Perhaps, the headmistress continued, it's time to reconsider some of our traditional approaches. Lady Kaelara, would you be willing to assist in demonstrating these principles to other classes? Of course, headmistress, I replied, finally letting the spell dissipate. The room seemed darker without it, as if regular light was somehow less real than the harmonious magic I'd created. Excellent. And Lord Alaric, she turned to where he sat. Since you share a similar dual resonance, you'll join these demonstrations. The students should see how earth and shadow can also find their balance. As the class ended, students filed out in a buzz of excited whispers. The demonstration had shaken their preconceptions about magical resonance, and I could see many of them looking at their own house colors with new consideration. Master Calderon had retreated to his desk, carefully avoiding the headmistress's gaze. "That was incredible," Alaric said quietly as we gathered our books. "The way you combined the resonances. It was like watching a dance. When the headmistress mentioned demonstrations, I'm not sure I can." "You can," I interrupted. "I felt it during the sorting ceremony. Your earth and shadow magics are just as complementary as my light and shadow. They're just waiting to be balanced properly." Viola joined us, her eyes now a swirling mix of silver and violet. "The ancient texts I found speak of this. They call it the harmony of opposites. It was supposedly the foundation of all powerful magic before the Great Separation." "The Great Separation?" Alaric asked, but before Viola could answer, we were interrupted by Nyala and Isidore approaching our table. "Quite a show, sister." Nyala's voice dripped with false sweetness. Mother would be so proud if she were still alive to see it. Though I wonder, did you ever consider that perhaps there was a reason these magical traditions were abandoned? I noticed her hand still clutching that strange pendant. Now that I could see it clearly, it appeared to be made of some dark metal, with intricate runes that seemed to shift and change as I watched. The ring beneath my sleeve grew uncomfortably warm in its presence. "Those who fear power often try to control it through artificial limitations," I replied evenly. "The ancients understood that true mastery comes from balance, not restriction." "Balance," Isidore scoffed, but there was something hungry in his eyes. "Is that what you call it?" This morning's display was nothing more than a parlor trick. Real power comes from commitment to a single path, a pure resonance. The headmistress, who had been speaking quietly with Master Calderon, suddenly appeared beside us. "An interesting perspective, Lord Isidore. Perhaps you'd care to demonstrate your theory of pure resonance in tomorrow's advanced practical session? I believe Lady Kaelara and Lord Alaric would be excellent opponents for a formal magical duel." Chapter 7. Lessons in Power. The challenge hung in the air like storm clouds gathering. Isidore's face flickered between confidence and concern, while Nyala's fingers tightened around her mysterious pendant. "A formal magical duel?" Isidore recovered quickly, forcing a smile. "I would be honored, headmistress, though perhaps it would be more equitable if Lady Nyala joined me. 2 pure resonance practitioners against T2 experimental ones." The headmistress's eyes narrowed slightly. "An interesting suggestion. Very well. Tomorrow at noon in the Grand Arena. The entire school will attend. It will be an excellent educational opportunity to compare different approaches to magical theory." As the headmistress walked away, Viola grabbed my arm, her eyes now a stormy gray. "Be careful. That pendant Nyala's wearing, I've seen something similar in the Isle archives. It's called a resonance amplifier, and they were banned centuries ago for good reason." "They're dangerous?" Alaric asked, keeping his voice low. "They enhance magical power, yes, but at a cost. They draw energy from somewhere else, somewhere dark," Viola shuddered. The texts weren't clear about the exact consequences, but several passages mentioned corruption of the soul. I watched my sister and Isidore leave the classroom, noting how the pendant seemed to pulse in time with their footsteps. Through my bond with Starweaver, I felt a distant warning. Something about their combined energy felt wrong, discordant. "We need to prepare," I said firmly. "Alaric, meet me in the practice yards after dinner." "Viola, can you find anything else about these amplifiers in the library? And—" I hesitated. "I think it's time to tell you both everything about the ring, about what really happened the night I left home." Finally, Viola smiled, her eyes shifting to a deep purple. "I was wondering when you'd trust us enough to share that story." "Trust goes both ways," I replied, touching the ring beneath my sleeve. "And tomorrow we'll need to trust each other completely." Chapter 8. The practice yard was eerily quiet as twilight settled over the school grounds. Alaric and I had spent hours preparing for tomorrow's duel, working to harmonize our dual resonances, just as I had demonstrated in class. The ring beneath my sleeve had grown steadily warmer throughout our practice, seeming to approve of our efforts to balance our powers. "Tell us about the ring," Viola said softly, setting aside the ancient tome she'd brought from the library. Her eyes shifted to a deep midnight blue in the gathering darkness. "And about what really happened the night you left." I took a deep breath, touching the concealed ring. It belonged to my mother, passed down through generations of our family. But it's more than just an heirloom. It's one of the 3 artifacts mentioned in the prophecy of 3 keys, the ones that maintain the balance of the Shadowbinder's seal, the Ring of Harmony. Viola nodded. The texts speak of it working in concert with the Crown of Wisdom and the Sword of Justice. But they were separated long ago, weren't they? They were, I confirmed, finally pulling back my sleeve to reveal the ring. In the dim light, its surface seemed to ripple with both light and shadow. My mother discovered something about the artifacts, something that made her a target. The night she died. It wasn't an accident. Alaric's expression darkened. "Your sister?" "Nyala and Isidore," I nodded grimly. "They wanted the ring's power, but they didn't understand its true nature. It can't be taken by force. It chooses its bearer." The night I left, I overheard them planning to use darker methods to claim it. They'd found some kind of ritual, something involving those resonance amplifiers Nyala's wearing now. "The amplifiers are mentioned here," Viola indicated her book. "They were created during the Age of Shadows as weapons against the Shadowbinder. They tap into corrupt magic, amplifying power but poisoning the user's connection to natural resonances. The more they're used, the more they corrupt," I finished. "That's why Nyala's magic felt wrong during the sorting ceremony. She's been using that pendant, hasn't she?" Before anyone could respond, a sudden chill swept through the practice yard. The torches flickered, and I felt the ring grow ice cold against my skin. Through my bond with Starweaver, I sensed immediate danger. The darkness that swept through the practice yard wasn't natural. It moved with purpose, coalescing into writhing tendrils that reached for us like hungry fingers. Viola's eyes blazed silver as she raised a magical barrier, while Alaric and I immediately fell into the defensive stance we'd been practicing. "Shadow constructs," Viola called out, her voice tense. "But they're wrong, corrupted. This isn't natural shadow magic." She was right. As a dual resonance practitioner with shadow affinity, I could feel how twisted and malformed these creatures were. The ring on my finger pulsed with cold warning, and through my bond with Starweaver, I sensed his agitation from the stables. The amplifiers, I realized, watching the shadows take more solid form. Someone's using them to corrupt natural shadow magic. "Alaric, remember what we practiced, earth and shadow and harmony." Alaric nodded, and I felt him channel his dual resonance. The ground beneath the shadow constructs began to glow with a deep earthen light, while I wove patterns of pure shadow magic to counter their corrupted version. The combination was powerful. Wherever our magic touched the constructs, they began to dissolve. "Behind you," Viola shouted, her barrier flickering as more shadows poured in from every direction. I spun to see a larger construct forming, its shape eerily humanoid. Within its depths, I caught a glimpse of something familiar, the same dark metal as Nyala's pendant. "They're using the amplifiers to control these things," I called out, weaving light and shadow together in the pattern I demonstrated in class. "But they're not here themselves. They're projecting their power from somewhere else." "The library tower," Alaric grunted, struggling to maintain his earth-shadow combination. "I can feel the resonance coming from there." Viola's eyes suddenly widened. "This isn't just an attack, it's a distraction. The real target must be the artifacts vault," I finished, remembering the headmistress's words about the school's ancient treasures. "They're trying to keep us busy while they—" My words were cut off as the humanoid shadow construct lunged forward, its form rippling with corrupted magic. The ring on my finger blazed with sudden heat, and without thinking, I raised my hand. Light and shadow burst forth in perfect harmony, cutting through the construct like a blade of pure energy. The artifacts vault was housed in the oldest part of the school, beneath the central tower. As we fought our way through the corrupted shadows, I could feel the ring's urgency growing stronger. Whatever Nyala and Isidore were planning, we had to stop them before they reached the vault. "We need to split up," I called out, combining light and shadow to create a protective barrier around us. Viella, can you maintain these defenses? Keep the constructs contained here? Her eyes shifted to molten silver as she nodded. Go, I'll hold them off. But be careful, those amplifiers are dangerous. The text mentioned that extended use can cause permanent damage to both the user and anyone nearby. Alaric, come with me, I said, already moving toward the central tower. If they're really after the artifacts, they'll need both earth and shadow magic to breach the vault's defenses. As we raced through the darkened corridors, I explained what I knew about the vault's protections. My mother helped design some of the wards. They're based on the same principles as the Shadowbinder's seal, multiple resonances working in harmony. That's why they need Isidore's earth magic to complement Nyala's corrupted light. But why now? Alaric asked as we descended the spiral staircase leading to the vault level. Why risk attacking before tomorrow's duel? Because they're afraid, I realized. After today's demonstration in class, they know their pure resonance theory won't stand against balanced magic. They're desperate. We reached the vault level to find the corridor already filled with the same corrupted shadows we'd fought above. But these were different, more focused, more controlled. Through them, I could make out two figures working at the vault's massive doors. Nyala's pendant glowed with sickly light as she channeled its power, while Isidore pressed his hands against the stone, trying to manipulate the earth-based wards. The sight of them working together sent a chill through me, not just because of what they were doing, but because of what the corrupted magic was doing to them. My sister's normally perfect features were drawn and gaunt, dark veins visible beneath her pale skin. Isidore looked no better, his eyes sunken and his movements jerky, unnatural. The amplifiers were consuming them even as they used them. Stop! My voice echoed through the corridor, amplified by the ring's power. Nyala, look at what that thing is doing to you. My sister turned, and in the corrupted light of her pendant, I barely recognized her. The beautiful, proud sister I'd grown up with had been transformed into something that looked half dead, consumed by dark magic. Always the concerned older sister, she sneered, but her voice was raspy, strained. Coming to save me from myself? You never understood real power, Kaelara. You were always too afraid to reach for it. This isn't power. I gestured at the corrupted shadows swirling around them. It's poison. Those amplifiers are destroying you both. Whatever you think is in that vault, it's not worth this. Isidore laughed, a hollow sound that echoed unnaturally. Not worth it? The crown of wisdom lies beyond these doors. With it and your ring, we'll have 2 of the 3 keys. The Shadowbinder's seal will be ours to command. The seal isn't meant to be commanded, Alaric spoke up, his earth magic rumbling through the stone beneath our feet. It's meant to be maintained, balanced. What you're doing could destroy everything. Balance, Nyala spat the word. That's all Mother ever talked about. Balance this, harmony that. Look where it got her, dead in her precious garden, still clutching her ideals about proper magic use. The ring flared hot against my skin as anger surged through me. You killed her, I said quietly, finally voicing what I'd suspected all along. You and Isidore. She discovered what you were planning with the amplifiers, didn't she? She would have stopped us, Isidore said, his corrupted earth magic creating cracks in the vault door, just like you're trying to stop us now. But this time, dear Kaelara, you don't have your mother to protect you. The shadows around them coalesced into deadly spears, aimed directly at us. But something was wrong. The corruption had spread too far, too fast. I could see it eating away at the very stone of the vault, threatening to breach not just the door, but the entire foundation of the school. The corrupted magic was spreading like a disease through the vault's ancient stones. I could feel the ring resonating with the building's protective wards, warning of imminent collapse. If the foundation gave way, it wouldn't just be the vault that was destroyed. The entire central tower would come down. Alaric, I called out, never taking my eyes off Nyala and Isidore. We need to stabilize the foundation. Can you channel earth magic through the stone? He nodded, pressing his hands to the wall. The corruption is deep, but I can feel the original wards, or they're still fighting back. I reached for my dual resonance, letting light and shadow flow together as they had in class. But this time, I wove them into the very fabric of the vault's magic, supporting and strengthening the ancient protections. Through the ring, I could feel my mother's presence, as if her own magic still lived in the wards she'd helped create. "You're too late," Nyala laughed, but her voice was weak, strained. The pendant around her neck pulsed with sickly energy, the corruption visibly spreading up her neck and across her face. "The door is almost breached once we have the crown." "The crown won't respond to corrupted magic," I interrupted, understanding flowing through me from the ring. "These artifacts, they're meant to work in harmony, pure resonance, not this twisted version you've created." Mother knew that. That's why she fought to protect them. Why she had to die. Isidore snarled, his hands sinking into the stone as corrupted earth magic poured from him. She would have kept us weak, bound by rules and traditions. With these amplifiers, we can take what we want. But even as he spoke, cracks began spreading from where his hands touched the vault. The corruption was eating through the stone faster than Kaelara could stabilize it. Through my bond with Starweaver, I felt a surge of panic. The entire structure was becoming unstable. "Nyala," I tried one last time, reaching for my sister through our shared blood, through memories of who she had been before the corruption. "Look at yourself. This power isn't worth your soul. Mother wouldn't have wanted." "Mother is dead," she screamed. But there were tears in her corrupted eyes. "And soon you'll join her." The shadows around her surged forward like a tidal wave of darkness. But this time, I was ready. The ring blazed with pure light as I channeled both resonances, creating a barrier of harmonized energy. Behind me, Alaric's earth magic rippled through the stone, strengthening my defense. Chapter 9. The vault chamber trembled with the clash of opposing magics. My harmonized barrier held against Nyala's corrupted shadows, but I could feel the entire foundation of the tower groaning under the strain. Through the ring, I sensed the ancient ward struggling to contain the spreading corruption. "Headmistress!" Biela's voice echoed down the stairwell as she descended, her eyes now a blazing white. The shadow constructs above, they're dissolving, but the corruption is spreading through the school's ley lines. Behind her came Headmistress Valorian, moving with purposeful grace despite the chaos. Her expression changed from concern to horror as she took in the scene. Nyala and Isidore's corrupted forms, the cracking vault door, and the darkness eating away at the very stones of the school. "The amplifiers," she breathed, recognition and old pain in her voice. "I should have known when I saw that pendant. They were supposed to have been destroyed centuries ago." "You knew about these?" I asked, maintaining my barrier as another wave of corrupted magic crashed against it. The ring pulsed in time with my heartbeat, lending strength to my dual resonance. "They were my greatest mistake," the headmistress admitted. "Long ago, before I became headmistress, I helped create them. We thought we could enhance magical power, make it easier to maintain the Shadowbinder's seal, but the cost." She shook her head. "The corruption nearly destroyed everything. We sealed away the knowledge, hid the remaining amplifiers, until Nyala and Isidore found them." Alaric grunted, still fighting to stabilize the foundation. "But how? Where?" Our mother's research, I realized, memories clicking into place. She wasn't just studying the artifacts, she was tracking down the amplifiers to destroy them. That's why. I turned to Nyala, whose corrupted features twisted with rage. "That's why you killed her. She found your cache of amplifiers. She would have destroyed everything we'd worked for." Nyala rasped, dark veins now covering most of her face. Years of searching, of studying the old texts. She didn't understand. With these, we could control the seal itself. The headmistress stepped forward, her power radiating like heat from a forge. "The seal was never meant to be controlled. It's a balance point between forces far greater than any of us. What you've done with these amplifiers has destabilized that balance." As if to emphasize her words, another tremor shook the chamber. Chunks of ceiling began to fall as the corruption spread through the stone. Through my connection with Starweaver, I could feel the panic spreading through the school above us, students and teachers evacuating as the tower threatened to collapse. "Nyala," I tried again, seeing my sister's hands trembling as she clutched the pendant. "Look at what it's doing to you both." The corruption isn't just in the stone, it's in your blood, your magic. Please, let us help you before it's too late. For a moment, I saw a flicker of my real sister in her eyes, the girl who used to braid my hair and share secrets under the covers at night. But then Isidore's corrupted earth magic surged, and the moment was lost. We're beyond help, he snarled, his voice barely human now. Beyond the petty limitations you all cling to, with the crown's power added to these amplifiers, we'll transcend. You'll die, the headmistress cut in sharply. Just like all the others who tried to use the amplifiers, I watched it happen. Watched the corruption eat them from the inside, out. That's why we sealed them away, why your mother spent her life trying to destroy them. Another wave of corrupted magic pulsed from Nyala's pendant, but this time I saw the toll it took on her. Blood trickled from her nose, and her skin had taken on an ashen quality. The dark veins now covered most of her visible skin, pulsing with the same sickly rhythm as the pendant. The vault's wards are failing, Alaric warned, his hands pressed against the cracking stone. If we don't do something soon, the whole tower will come down, with us in it. The chamber had become a maelstrom of conflicting energies. Corrupted shadows writhed against pure magic, while the very stones beneath our feet groaned with the strain of Isidore's twisted earth magic. Through it all, I could feel the ring growing warmer, almost burning against my skin as it responded to the chaos. There's only one way to stop this, the headmistress said, her voice carrying even through the magical tumult. The amplifiers must be destroyed, but their corruption has spread too far. We need to create a purification circle, all of us, combining our resonances in perfect harmony. A purification circle? Alaric asked, still struggling to hold the foundation together. But that requires at least 4 different magical resonances, perfectly balanced. We have them, I realized, looking around the chamber. Earth and shadow from you, light and shadow from me, Viola's pure light, and the headmistress's. Time magic, the headmistress finished, her eyes glowing with ancient power. The original resonance that helped create the Shadowbinder's seal itself. Nyala laughed, but the sound was more like breaking glass than human mirth. You think you can purify this power? It's beyond your control now. The corruption has spread too far, too deep. Even if you destroy these amplifiers, the damage is done. She was right. I could see the corruption eating away at her and Isidore, turning them into something less than human. The pendant around her neck pulsed with sickly light, and with each pulse, more of the dark veins spread across her skin. Isidore was even worse, his hands now literally melding with the corrupted stone of the vault. "Kaelara," Viola called out, her eyes shifting through colors as she analyzed the magical currents. The ring, it's responding to the vault's wards. I think it wants to help. The ring was indeed pulsing with increasing urgency, and through it, I felt an echo of my mother's presence stronger than ever. Memories flooded back, not just of her death, but of all the times she'd taught me about balance, about harmony, about the true nature of magic. Mother knew this would happen, I said softly, understanding dawning. She knew someone would try to use the amplifiers again. That's why she bound the ring to me, why she made sure I understood about dual resonance. She was preparing me for this moment. "A purification circle," the headmistress commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Everyone, take your positions. Alaric to the north with earth, Viola to the east with pure light. I'll take the south with time magic. And Kaelara, you must stand at the western point. Your dual resonance will complete the circle." As we moved into position, the corruption continued to spread. The vault's massive doors were now almost completely consumed by the dark magic, the metal and stone warping into unnatural shapes. Nyala and Isidore stood at its center, their forms barely recognizable as human anymore. "You can't stop this," Isidore growled, his voice distorted as the corruption spread through his throat. The power. "It's beyond anything you could imagine. We can feel the seal itself, feel it weakening. That's what you don't understand," I said, taking my position. The ring was now burning hot against my skin, its power flowing through me like a river of pure light. The seal isn't meant to be controlled or dominated. Mother tried to teach us that. It's about balance, about harmony between all forms of magic. The headmistress began to channel her time magic, and I could feel the very fabric of reality bending around us. Baela's pure light blazed like a newborn star, while Alaric's earth magic rumbled through the foundation, fighting against Isidore's corruption. Through the ring, I felt my mother's presence stronger than ever. Memories flooded back, not just of her death, but of all the lessons she'd tried to teach us. The way she would demonstrate how different magical resonances could work together, how she would spend hours in her garden, maintaining the delicate balance of growth and decay. "Begin the purification," the headmistress called out. "Channel your power through your primary resonance first, then layer in your secondary. Kaelara, you must weave them all together. The ring will show you how." As I reached for my magic, I felt the ring's guidance. Like threads of light and shadow, I could see the connections between all our different resonances. Time magic from the headmistress, spiraling and bending reality itself. Pure light from Baela, burning away corruption. Earth magic from Alaric, providing foundation and stability. Nyala screamed as the purification circle began to take effect. The pendant around her neck pulsed frantically, trying to fight against our combined power. Dark veins writhed across her skin like living things, and I could see the moment when she realized what was happening. "Sister," she whispered, and for the first time in years I heard real fear in her voice. I can't stop it. The corruption, it's inside MME. The purification circle blazed with combined power, each of our resonances weaving together into something greater than the sum of its parts. Through the ring, I could guide the energies, just as my mother had taught me, not forcing them, but letting them flow naturally into harmony. "Kaelara," Nyala gasped, tears of blood now streaming down her corrupted face. I remember Mother's garden, the way she would show us how to blend magics. How did I forget? How did I let this happen? The pendant around her neck was fighting back violently now, its corruption trying to maintain its hold. Isidore had completely merged with a corrupted stone, his form barely humanoid as he screamed in a voice that echoed with otherworldly power. "The amplifiers are breaking down," the headmistress called out, her time magic creating ripples in reality itself. "But the corruption has spread too deep. We need more power to complete the purification." Through my bond with Starweaver, I suddenly felt a new surge of energy. Above us, in the school grounds, other students and teachers had formed their own circles, channeling power down to us through the school's ley lines. The very foundations of the academy were becoming part of our purification ritual. "Nyala," I called out to my sister, seeing her struggle against the corruption. "Fight it. Remember who you are. Remember Mother's lessons about balance, about harmony." The ring on my finger blazed like a star, and through it, I felt my mother's presence stronger than ever. Not just a memory or an echo, but her actual magical essence, preserved within the ring for this very moment. She had known this might happen, had prepared for it in ways I was only now beginning to understand. "My daughters," her voice echoed through the chamber, carried by the ring's power. "Remember what I taught you. Magic isn't about dominance or control. It's about understanding, about finding the balance in all things." Nyala screamed, not in pain this time, but in recognition. The pendant's hold on her began to weaken as tears carved clean tracks through her corrupted skin. "Mother, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The purification circle reached its peak, all of our resonances perfectly aligned. Time magic from the headmistress reversed the corruption spread. Pure light from Baela burned away the darkness. Earth magic from Alaric restored the foundation's natural state. And through it all, my dual resonance wove everything together, guided by the ring and my mother's lingering presence. The pendant around Nyala's neck shattered in a burst of purified energy. The corruption that had spread through the vault began to recede, the stones returning to their natural state. Isidore's corrupted form separated from the wall, his body returning to human shape as the amplifier's influence was purged. As the last of the corruption faded, I caught my sister as she fell. The dark veins were gone from her skin, though scars remained, permanent reminders of what the amplifiers had done. She was crying freely now, clutching at me like she had when we were children. "It's over," the headmistress said softly, her time magic settling back into normal flow. The amplifiers are destroyed truly this time, and the vault." She gestured to the massive doors, now restored to their original state. "Remain sealed, its treasures safe." I held my sister close, feeling the ring's warmth fade to a gentle glow. Through my tears, I smiled, finally understanding the full depth of my mother's wisdom. It had never been about power or control. It had always been about balance, about harmony, about love. The sun was rising over the school grounds as we emerged from the vault chamber, its light touching everything with the promise of a new day, a new beginning. The ring glowed softly on my finger, and in my heart I felt my mother's approval. Epilogue. 1 year had passed since the events in the artifact vault. The Academy of Magic stood stronger than ever, its ancient walls now reinforced with new protective enchantments that I had helped create. The ring on my finger no longer pulsed with warnings. Instead, it glowed with a steady, confident light, symbolizing the restored balance. I found myself spending more time in Mother's garden, which had become my sanctuary for teaching advanced resonance techniques. The students would gather there, eager to learn about the harmonization of magical energies. Among them, Alaric was a constant presence, though no longer as a student. Our relationship had evolved into something deeper, more meaningful than either of us had initially expected. "You're doing it again," he said one evening as we walked through the blooming night roses. "That little smile when you think about the new resonance patterns." I touched the ring absently, feeling its warmth. I can't help it. Every day we discover something new about how different magics can work together. Mother would have loved to see this. The restoration of the academy had brought unexpected changes. Headmistress Valorian had appointed me as the youngest member of the Council of Magisters, specifically to oversee the development of dual resonance studies. My research into balanced magic had attracted attention from across the kingdoms, and scholars regularly visited to study our new methods. Nyala's recovery was a slower, more delicate process. The corruption had left its marks, silver scars that traced patterns across her skin like a map of her mistakes. But each day brought small improvements. She had begun assisting in the library, her knowledge of ancient texts proving invaluable as we cataloged and protected the Academy's vast collection of magical knowledge. "I found something today," she told me during one of our evening talks, "in Mother's old research notes." She wasn't just studying the amplifiers to destroy them. She was tracking the third artifact, the Sword of Balance. She believed all 3 artifacts together could permanently seal away the corruption. The revelation about the third artifact sparked new questions, new possibilities. But for now, watching my sister slowly reclaim herself was enough. The garden had become our meeting place, where we would sit among Mother's flowers and slowly rebuild the trust that had been shattered. The evening sun cast long shadows across the Academy's courtyard as Alaric and I finished our last class of the day. The students had been particularly enthusiastic about our demonstration of combining earth and dual resonance magic, creating crystalline structures that pulsed with harmonized energy. "You've come a long way from that arrogant nobleman I met at the horse fair," I teased as we walked through Mother's garden. The night roses were beginning to open, their luminescent petals casting a soft glow in the gathering dusk. Alaric laughed, a sound that still made my heart skip. "And you're no longer that mysterious woman who showed up everyone by taming the wildest horse in Kaelara." He reached for my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine. The ring on my finger warmed pleasantly at his touch, as if approving. Our relationship had evolved naturally, growing stronger through shared challenges and quiet moments like these. The garden had become our special place, where we could be ourselves without the formality required of council members and master instructors. "I've been thinking," Alaric said, stopping beside the fountain where Mother used to teach us about magical harmonies, "about what your sister found in those research notes. The Sword of Balance, it's not just a legend, is it?" I shook my head, remembering the countless hours spent in the library with Nyala, piecing together Mother's scattered notes. "No, it's real." Mother believed it was hidden in the ancient temple of the first resonance, deep in the Crystal Mountains. But she also wrote that it could only be claimed by someone who truly understood the balance between all magical forces. Alaric turned to face me, his expression serious. "Then we should find it, with your dual resonance and my earth magic, with everything we've learned about harmonization." He paused, taking both my hands in his. Kaelara, I'm not just suggesting this as your fellow instructor or friend. I love you. I think I've loved you since that day in the horse fair, even when I was too proud to admit it. The ring pulsed warmly, and for a moment I felt Mother's presence, not as a ghost or memory, but as a gentle approval. The night roses around us seemed to glow brighter, responding to the surge of emotions and magic. I love you too, I whispered, finally giving voice to feelings that had been growing for months. And yes, we should seek the sword. Not just for the academy or the kingdom, but because it's part of who we are, who we've become together. He pulled me close, and as our lips met, the garden's magic swirled around us in a dance of light and shadow. Somewhere in the distance, a bell tolled, marking the end of another day at the academy. But for us, it marked the beginning of something new, something wonderful. In the depths of the academy's healing ward, Isidore's recovery continued under careful supervision. Unlike Nyala, whose corruption had been primarily spiritual, his physical merger with the stone had left deeper scars. I visited him regularly, watching as Headmistress Valorian's time magic slowly restored his humanity. "The Crystal Mountains," he said one day, his voice stronger than it had been in months. "I remember reading about them in the ancient texts before the corruption took hold. The temple you seek isn't just hidden, it's protected by the original Shadowbinder's magic." I sat beside his bed, noting how the dark veins had faded from his skin, leaving behind silvery patterns like frost on a window. "What do you remember from those texts, Isidore? Anything that could help us locate the sword?" He closed his eyes, concentrating. There was a map, encoded in one of the oldest grimoires. But not just a physical map, it was tied to magical resonances. "Your mother." She was close to decoding it before. His voice trailed off, heavy with regret. "Before you and Nyala killed her," I finished quietly. The words no longer carried the burning anger they once had, replaced by a deep sadness for what could have been. "Yes," he whispered, "but there's something you should know. The night she died, she wasn't just trying to stop us from using the amplifiers. She had discovered something about the sword, something that frightened her. She said it wasn't just a weapon, but a key." This new information sent my mind racing. I remembered Mother's last words about balance and harmony, about the true nature of magical resonance. The ring on my finger pulsed gently, as if responding to the memory. Later that evening, I shared this revelation with Alaric in the garden. We sat among the night roses, their ethereal glow reflecting off the crystalline structures we had created during class. "A key," Alaric mused, his arm around my shoulders. "But a key to what? And why would it frighten someone as powerful as your mother?" "I think I might know." Nyala's voice came from the garden path. She stood there, looking stronger than I'd seen her in weeks, holding an ancient tome. "I found this hidden in a false bottom of Mother's desk. It's her personal journal, and, Kaelara, you need to see this." The journal revealed Mother's final discovery. The Sword of Balance wasn't just the third artifact. It was the linchpin that could either permanently seal or completely destroy the boundary between pure and corrupted magic. In the wrong hands, it could unleash chaos beyond imagination. That's why she was so desperate to keep the amplifiers from being used, I realized. She knew if someone corrupted by their power found the sword, the world itself could be torn apart, Alaric finished, his hand tightening around mine. The winter winds howled around us as our small expedition made its way through the treacherous passes of the Crystal Mountains. Alaric, Nyala, and I had spent months preparing for this journey, studying Mother's journals and gathering the necessary magical artifacts. The headmistress had insisted on accompanying us, her time magic proving invaluable in navigating the ancient pathways. "The resonance patterns are getting stronger," I called out over the wind, the ring on my finger pulsing with increasing intensity. The crystalline formations around us seemed to respond to its energy, creating subtle harmonics that only those trained in magical resonance could detect. "Your mother's notes were right," the headmistress observed, her silver hair whipping in the wind. "The temple isn't just hidden by magic, it's woven into the very fabric of these mountains." The first resonance shaped this entire range. Nyala, who had insisted on joining us despite her still healing condition, pointed to a formation ahead. "Look at those crystal patterns. They're exactly like the diagrams in Mother's journal. We must be getting close." The relationship between Nyala and me had grown stronger during our preparation for this journey. Working together to decipher Mother's research had helped heal old wounds, and I could see glimpses of my sister's true self emerging from beneath the scars of corruption. Alaric moved closer to me, his earth magic sensing something in the mountain's depths. "There's a chamber below us," he said, placing his hand against the crystalline wall, "but it's protected by multiple layers of magical barriers." "That's where the synchronization of our powers comes in," I replied, taking his hand. The ring's warmth spread between us, and I could feel our magical resonances beginning to align. Mother's notes spoke of a gateway that would only open for those who understood true magical harmony. The headmistress stepped forward, her time magic creating ripples in the air around us. The temple's defenses were designed to prevent anyone corrupted by power from reaching the sword, but they will also recognize those who seek balance. Working together, we began the complex process of harmonizing our different magical resonances. Alaric's earth magic provided the foundation, while Nyala's purified shadow magic added depth. The headmistress's time magic created the framework, and my dual resonance, amplified by Mother's ring, wove everything together. The mountain itself seemed to respond, crystal formations lighting up in complex patterns that matched the rhythms of our combined magic. A doorway began to materialize in the rock face, its surface rippling like water. "Mother stood here," Nyala whispered, touching the crystalline frame. "I can feel traces of her magic." She made it this far, but something stopped her from going further. She was waiting, I realized, understanding flowing through me with the ring's pulse. Waiting for all of us to be ready, to understand the true meaning of balance. The Temple of First Resonance was more magnificent than any of us had imagined. Crystal spires reached toward a ceiling that seemed to contain an entire galaxy of stars, while ancient runes pulsed with pure magical energy along the walls. At the center of the vast chamber, suspended in a column of light, hung the Sword of Balance. "It's beautiful," Nyala breathed, her eyes reflecting the sword's ethereal glow. The weapon wasn't made of metal, but rather pure, crystallized magical energy, its blade shifting between light and shadow with each pulse. As we approached, Mother's ring began to resonate with the sword, creating harmonics that filled the chamber with music. The headmistress stepped forward, her time magic revealing layers of history in the air around us. "Your mother stood here," she said softly, "and saw what we see now. The sword isn't just a weapon or a key, it's a testament to what magic should be. Perfect balance, perfect harmony." Alaric's hand found mine as we moved closer to the sword. "The amplifiers were corrupted because they tried to force control over magic," he observed. "But this is different. It's about cooperation, about understanding." Following the guidance in Mother's journal, we positioned ourselves around the sword. Alaric with his earth magic to the north, Nyala with her purified shadow magic to the east, the headmistress with her time magic to the south, and me with my dual resonance to the west. As our powers combined, the sword began to descend. Through the ring, I felt Mother's presence stronger than ever, guiding us in this final task. The weapon came to rest in my hands, its weight perfectly balanced, its energy harmonizing with all our magical signatures at once. "This is what Mother wanted us to understand," I said, watching as the sword's energy flowed through all of us. "The true power isn't in controlling magic, but in letting it flow naturally, in maintaining the balance between all forces." With the sword's power added to our combined magic, we began the ritual Mother had detailed in her final notes. The headmistress's time magic stabilized the ancient wards, while Alaric's earth magic reinforced the physical boundaries between pure and corrupted magic. Nyala's shadow magic, now fully purified, helped bridge the gaps, while my dual resonance wove everything together. The sword dissolved into pure energy, spreading throughout the magical fabric of our world. We could feel it strengthening the natural barriers, healing the damage done by centuries of attempted control and corruption. "It's done," the headmistress announced as the last echoes of magic settled. "The boundaries are sealed, but not as barriers, as filters, allowing magic to flow naturally while preventing corruption from spreading." Months later, back at the academy, life had found a new rhythm. Alaric and I were married in Mother's garden, with Nyala as my witness, and the headmistress officiating. The night roses bloomed out of season for the occasion, their light mixing with the magical illumination from the crystalline structures we had created together. Isidore, fully recovered, had chosen to travel to distant lands, seeking to help others understand the importance of magical balance. Nyala had taken up Mother's position. As head researcher, her experience with corruption giving her unique insights into preventing its spread. As for me, I continued teaching at the academy, but with a deeper understanding of my mother's legacy. The ring on my finger remained a constant reminder of her wisdom, while Alaric's love and support helped me build something new from the foundations she had left behind. "Your mother would be proud," Alaric said one evening as we walked through the garden, now expanded to include new varieties of magical plants, "not just of what you've accomplished, but of who you've become." I touched the ring, feeling its warm response. "She knew," I replied, smiling. "She knew that sometimes the greatest magic comes not from power or control, but from learning to let go, from understanding that true strength lies in balance." Above us, the stars shone bright, their light reflecting off the crystal formations that now dotted the academy grounds. The future stretched before us, full of possibilities, and I knew that whatever challenges it held, we would face them together, always seeking that perfect harmony between light and shadow, between power and wisdom, between love and duty.